this could ultimately have turned out to be my biggest financial mistake if it didn't work out as intended. I brought my Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive back in December 2020 and it was rated to do 263 WLTP miles back then, which many people at the time couldn't understand why it was worth buying an EV, with many questions on the supercharging network, degradation and longevity of the battery, and more. The purchase price to buy it back then in 2020 was £40,490, and that's £49,900 or $63,000 inflation adjusted today, and I had an interest rate of 4.9% APR. Therefore, this could ultimately have turned out to be my biggest financial mistake if it didn't work out as intended. So this video could be seen as the end result, the final judgment you could say, as after 4 to 3 months, that's just over 3.5 years, I actually decided to sell it last month. Truth be told, the battery did not cause any problems, but there was degradation. I did sell it for a profit, but not as much as I wanted. I covered over 30,150 miles and using 7.1 megawatt hours in doing so. So how much did that cost me? What were the highlights of the vehicle? When were the dark times? Would I do it all over again? That's what you'll hear in this final Tesla Model 3 review. So to round this intro off, you could say that this is my final video on my Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive, as it officially signs off the ownership journey that I started documenting back in December 2020. Then it's on to what does the future hold, for which is probably one of my worst kept secrets if you're a subscriber, and if you haven't already, there's been weekly content since 2020, so a sub is much appreciated, as is a cheeky like too. Anyhow, lots to discuss, let's get straight into the video. So first up, I want to address probably one of, if not the biggest elephant in the room. Well, the first until we get to total charging costs and the maintenance. For now, let's discuss degradation and how that affects the range of my Tesla Model 3 after 3.5 years or 30,000 miles. And I know this is a real concern amongst those that are hesitant to buy an EV, or even those that are curious about buying a used Tesla, as I know that there are some used Tesla bargains that can be found right now. At the very beginning of the journey, the rated range of the car would have started at around the 250 mile mark when fully charged to 100%. Fast forward to 18 months ownership, the next 100% mark via the onboard computer then hits 235 miles. This was even documented in my 18-month review video too. Then fast forward over to 44 months. Do you know what happened next? It did the unthinkable and it went up. So we moved up to 236 miles on the onboard computer before it was then sold on. Therefore, this was encouraging to witness, as my degradation well and truly matched the data that average Teslas currently get. The first year seems to be the worst for degradation for sure, and this can be up to 5% over the course of the first year. Thereafter, it should be negligible, with fleet averaging 15% total lost after 200,000 miles, according to Tesla's fleet data at least. But do consider this data is based on the long-range batteries, which at the time was the same chemistry as my Model 3 SR Plus. So this was very much on trend with Tesla's fleet. It also goes to show you that if you do take a little bit extra care with the battery through a number of different techniques that I learned through my ownership, it does help, as I had no further degradation after the first year, which is insane. If you're interested in these techniques, I'll mark a dedicated video on the screen for you now. However, the same cannot be said about the new rear-wheel drive Tesla Model 3 and the Model Ys today. They have LFP batteries which should see next to no degradation at all, thanks to its resilient chemistry nature. So analysing battery degradation in EVs using my ownership alone is that degradation does happen. However, it's not as bad as you think, especially after the first year. But truthfully, this isn't uncommon with fuel-powered cars either, as over time they equally become less fuel efficient over time, leading to lower vehicle range. But let me know in the comments below if you thought this degradation performance was over or under your expectations. Moving on to how and why I sold my Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive, and if I sold with positive equity. Well, Yes, I did manage to sell and be in the black with my Tesla Model 3. Not big enough to reclaim all the initial deposit monies, but still, I know many others that are currently in negative equity, and I was myself at times depending on the trading value. But the truth is, back in 2020 and 2021, the car market was in a completely different place. Getting new cars was difficult, and getting hold of a used Tesla was even harder, with used Teslas worth more than brand new ones back then. It really was a crazy time. But as production ramped up and supply finally caught up, the used car market has evidently corrected itself. This wasn't isolated to Teslas either, as even the Porsche Taycan, for example, faced a similar fate. The winners in this situation could be you, as a used car buyer, as equally they were stung in 2020 and 2021. So the cards have somewhat flipped, you could say. A counter to this was that I traded in the vehicle and not sold it privately, for which I could have actually came close to receiving my deposit monies back, but I preferred speed and convenience. So I was ultimately happy with the trading value of $19,500, as Tesla actually bumped up the residuals for a short period of time. And this evidently led me to buying a new Tesla Model Y, which does have that super solid LFP battery mentioned earlier. To spare you the full deal details that I got, which in conjunction with the bumped up trading value, I actually recouped some of the savings via the next to 0% APR finance and more. You can find the full lowdown of the deal that I got in my video on the screen now. So yes, like every other car, a Tesla will depreciate, as cars are historically depreciating assets. Whether that will change, as Elon Musk has historically alluded to with robotaxi enabled functionality, is yet to be proven. However, even if there is a small chance that that could happen, is it worth considering that at present? Especially if it's just going to depreciate like any other car in the meantime? I'll leave that thought with you. Next up, let's discuss real world costs for 30,150 miles. Now, I've tracked this all since day one. How much do you think this cost me? And to help, I was fortunate to never have to pay for supercharger miles, but I use superchargers less than 5% of the time. So the lion's share of 95% was dominated by home charging, which is by far the cheapest and most convenient way to charge. My costs range from 5p to 10p per kilowatt hour, and that has since dropped to 7 pence per kilowatt hour. Therefore, not even a global energy prices spike shook the overall costs too much. The outcome was a shocking £354. Yes, £354 or $450 to my US friends across the pond. Even if we incorporate some charging losses, that's still £400 as a worst case. However, I didn't factor in the free supercharger miles here, so it's likely to be in the region of £350 or £400 in the end. And it's going to be so little, it's not even worth me totaling it up to the penny. I'm happy whether it's £350 or £400 for over 30,000 miles. So if you haven't worked it out, if you own an EV, you can get sub 2p mileage and essentially recharge the car each month with the same pocket money that I used to get over 2 decades ago. And yes, I'm younger than I look. It has its benefits and its drawbacks at times, but running a Tesla EV is simply undisputed when it comes to costs. And after 1 month of my Tesla Model Y, I'm collecting the same data too, which is heavier and has a larger aerodynamic footprint than my Model 3, and it certainly pays for an interesting insight for my upcoming 1 month review video. Moving on to the highlights of the vehicle. What did I learn that only ownership would teach you? Well, compared to a petrol car where the engine gets noisier and its punchiness starts to fade, the performance itself was identical to day one. The motor does not begin to whine or feel tired, particularly after 30,000 miles at least. The handling never faltered. You could feel the difference though between old worn tyres to new 100%, as you would do in any other car really, to be honest. But really, 0 to 60, 5.3 seconds, driving around country lanes, it's going to be missed. It was low to the ground and lightweight due to the lack of front motor on the front axle, so whether it was just psychological, turning felt easy, slightly oversteery, which is what I like. So it really was fun to drive, and if you feel electric cars don't have the same feeling or soul to it, this won't be the same as a petrol car. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's distinctly worse. What it lacks in engine noise is then replaced with instant torque and a persistent familiar feeling every time. There's no turbo lag, etc., just on-demand power. It's simply a different sensation, but equally breathtaking. This was the slowest Tesla at the time of purchase too. The new Model 3 Performance, even the long range now, duly refreshed, are supposed to be a step up as well. Other than thoroughly enjoying driving the vehicle day to day, my other notable highlight has to be software updates that were persistent and featureful. This really helped prolong the ownership and gave you a new car feeling every other month when you get a software update that has a feature that you've been waiting for. No other car really compares to this. Others may claim it can do the same, but it's really not the same. These updates will be received for years to come, so don't think it's left out after a couple of years. You will still receive killer features in the years to come. For example, the inclusion of the Matrix headlights was a software update just a few months ago. No other car randomly gets a software update and delivers a heavy hitting feature like this for free. No way. Before rounding up the video, I think a few of you will also want to know what the darkest of times were with the Tesla Model 3. And to be honest, the darkest time was absolutely when our car was hit not once, not twice, but 3 times. And we actually got a Polestar 2 as a high car. And whilst that was a good car if you were coming from a petrol equivalent, it really wasn't the same as a Tesla in a first, as it was distinctly different in all sorts of areas. Anyhow, the repair process was like 2 or 3 weeks over a Christmas period, which wasn't so bad. The car is more solid than you think, and it is absolutely repairable despite the hearsay that you may hear otherwise. Another notable dark time, I would say, is having picked up my Berlin-made Model Y. It really demonstrated how much work had gone into the soundproofing of the vehicle. It was strangely noticeable after back-to-back driving, but what was even more interesting was the sound detector test that I did, where I did the back-to-back test with my Model 3, for which I did mention it in my first impression video of my Tesla Model Y, and it was quite a bit quieter considering that there is just 3 years between these two vehicles. But it's also testament to Tesla's philosophy to persistently improve in every area where possible, not just when there is a new model that comes out. Therefore, you will notice a difference in road noise between a new and an older Tesla for sure. The final issue is to do with the design of the Tesla wheels. The rim protrudes ever so slightly whether you rock a aero cap or you actually remove them, and it eventually forced me to buy third-party wheel covers, and these were a lifesaver from hiding the past curbing mistake, should we say, to a more protective layer moving forwards. So it can be counted against, but ideally a more favourable design here would be an area of development for me. So to summarise and conclude my Tesla Model 3 review, I think 2020 Adam made a great choice, as evidently I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the Tesla Model 3. So if you're in the market to buy a new or used Tesla, I'm confident that you will actually get the same positive impression as a whole. This has been my sole family car for over 3 years, and I've navigated circa 236 miles range with next to no implications whatsoever. We've never been able to not go anywhere because of that EV range that we had, and I and my wife have enjoyed driving the car daily. I've enjoyed receiving new features, even ending up with the average speed camera update via navigation just before we departed, and that feature really is coming along now. The costs have been really good to us, even with a global energy crisis happening, and ultimately this car was no financial mistake. It's been a real pleasure to drive, and the next owner of the vehicle will be receiving a real gem of a car. Moving on to the decision to buy a Tesla Model Y, and that was principally about enhancing the practicality of the sole family car. Therefore, moving to a Tesla Model Y felt different but familiar in the same sentence. It wasn't a step into the unknown, but a very much familiar territory. Therefore, trading the Model 3 for the Model Y was made easier because of this. Whilst the Model 3 journey has come to an end, a new EV ownership journey has now begun. So farewell Tesla Model 3, you're a good egg to us. So how was today's video? Do you have any other questions about owning a Tesla over a number of years? Let me know in the comment section below. I will have a Model Y 1 month review video coming up for you shortly, for which if you've enjoyed this video, now would be a great time to subscribe if you haven't already. Do like the video, share it with any friends or family that may find it beneficial. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.